Hello, today we're going to talk about chapter 4, which is visual persuasion. How is it we can use visual communications to persuade, to change behavior, to get people to believe that we should be doing what they're doing? So Eric Hoffer says the real persuaders are our appetites, our fears, and all above our vanity, because we are constantly thinking about ourselves first. And how can we decide whether or not something is okay or not? Because all communication is persuasion. And sometimes it's propaganda. Those are not the same things. They're not interchangeable. We're always attempting to mold or change a listener's views, their attitudes, whether it's, can I borrow money? Can I borrow the car? Can I get my way? Can I borrow your notes? We're constantly trying to get someone to give us something, and how do we do it? So how do we get them to do that? How do we modify their behavior? How do we socialize through the transmission of information? How do we realize what's okay and what's not? Trigger warning. All right, so we use photography as a way to arouse the viewer to interest and occasionally commend. Sometimes we want to be controversial. Unusual pictures are used purposely to shock and gain attention. A lot of this chapter is about shocking and gaining attention. And how do we use those images? So let's look here at this shot of Brooke Shields. When she was 14, she did this advertisement for Calvin Klein. So you know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing. So does she look 14? Would this really raise any flags today? Because we have changed what we think of as acceptable, what was once a very controversial ad, today seems pretty tame. So let's look at 2002, where Dior does a perfume ad that is actually called by Congress outrageous and irresponsible. So we have a very scantily clad woman, definitely has a look on her face that's kind of sexually appealing. But then we jump ahead to 2005, where we have absolutely no media attention or notice for a similar type of ad. And now our subject looks even younger, looks more wholesome, but is still, doesn't have spaghetti straps, but is still relatively scantily clad. So how do we continue to persuade ourselves as to what is okay? Shockvertising is shock advertising. It's deliberately in your face. It wants to offend. It wants to violate those norms, those personal values and ideals. So let's look at this one, which is for a fashion junkie, which given the current heroin epidemic is kind of in your face. So is this a good advertisement? How do we consider whether or not this is over the top or whether or not it's going to be something you want to save and hang on to? Linking sex with products is not new. We can look at this ad for Ghibli's Gin, and we can see that in the ice cubes, we've got the letter sex. So this is not something that just happened because of Photoshop. This is not something that happened just recently. It's something that we subliminally been pushing into things all along. Or how about when you stack these Pepsi cans? Is this a coincidence? Is this just a design thing, or is this done on purpose? We get the SEX here. How about this advertising catalog for Abercrombie? They put it out around Christmas time. They came under great firestorm because of the racy catalogs. Generally, Abercrombie, we think of, high school students are kind of their main audience. So what happens when mom and dad get this catalog? We have what? Picture of an orgy with presents? It's kind of questionable. Or how about this one? And it did hurt their sales. Sometimes the controversy did not sell more clothes, so the shockvertising definitely worked against them in this case. Shockingly violent or sexual images are the culmination of cultural cynicism and are justified. We make it justified. We persuade ourselves if it gets the attention. So how about watch this Eat Like You Mean It spot with Charlotte McKinney. Carl's Jr. definitely pushes the envelope as far as What is or isn't acceptable?
I love going all natural. It just makes me feel better. Nothing between me and my 100% all natural, juicy, grass-fed beef.
Introducing the All-Natural Burger, the first ever in fast food, with no antibiotics, no added hormones, and no steroids. Only at Carl's Jr.
So what is it about these Carl's Jr. ads? Continuing in the shockvertising mode, how about this advertisement for Levi's? They're designated to generate publicity. Part of it is to get us talking about the ads themselves. And oh, by the way, here's the brand. So it's that whole idea that bad publicity is better than no publicity. Or how about this one for Lynx shower gel? Who's their audience? What are they trying to get across? What is the purpose of this advertisement? Is it working? Do you actually remember the product? Do you just remember the image? Are you effectively communicating with that visual? So let's go back to Carl's Jr. again. And nothing says sexy like that spicy barbecue burger from Carl's Jr. Think about how we use sex to sell throughout this commercial and why is it was so popular. So now we've looked at Paris Hilton's commercial for Carl's Jr. It was popular enough to have a parody made of it. So someone was taking those images, those gestures, that way of appealing to people and totally repackaging it in kind of a disturbing but very funny way. Watch this one.
I love Paris in the springtime. I love Paris in the fall. I love Paris in the winter when it drizzles. I love Paris in the summer when it sizzles. I love Paris every moment.
All right, how about Playboy in Germany? Creates billboard advertisements that are actually printed on a special material with special ink that will react to moisture or rain. So all of a sudden your shirt is now see-through. Do you think we'd get away with it here today? So how about these Diesel ads? These are actually Diesel trying to sell jeans. They actually have been banned because of their controversy. So is it worth it? Is it worth trying to create that buzz? Is it worth trying to disturb people in order to get them to understand your brand? Do you want to be associated with that? How about this one for Playboy, which is overtly sexual if you know what you're doing. It's the more you know, the more you see. Or how about these advertisements for Viagra, which are pretty tongue-in-cheek. How about this advertisement for JCPenney? JCPenney did not approve this advertisement and never did run officially by them. It was leaked supposedly by their agency. So as we watch, we see the speed dressing. And what type of values does it associate with JCPenney, who claims to be this wholesome store, good for the family? And then we have these two teenagers. And why did it cause so much controversy? Go ahead and take a peek.
Hey, Mom, we're just gonna go down to the basement and watch some TV.
All right, we then jump up to propaganda. Propaganda is everywhere. It's used to fight wars, disease, to create or build division. It's commonplace. It's surprising. Sometimes it's horrific. Sometimes it's humorous. It's never neutral. It can be difficult to define and to identify. So we see things like public service announcements. They're a form of persuasion. They're constantly trying to disseminate information to us about causes they think should be of interest, things like drinking and driving or texting and driving. Maybe it's about drug use, maybe it's about how to study, maybe it's about domestic violence. You see these type of public announcements all over the place. So how about this issue about breastfeeding and whether or not breastfeeding is natural, whether it's not something we should embrace? This is a billboard in Europe. Do you think we could get away with it here? I kind of don't think so. So pictures have that surest way of conveying that idea. What's up? How do those pictures become part of our memory? How do they become part of what we associate with those concepts? How about this shockvertising propaganda with the baby about to inject heroin into his system? Is it effective? Is it over the top? How can you create images and use images to tell your story? Average smoker needs over 5,000 to get hooked. It's a very graphic image. It's very hard to look at. Makes a good point. So how about these types of advertisements? We see them at health clinics. We see them at the doctor's offices. You know, cigarettes cause fatal lung disease. They're addictive. So are these effective? Do these images come across to you? Do they say, don't smoke? Is this propaganda effective? So how about looking at PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals? They use a lot of propaganda in what they're doing. This advertisement was called The Holocaust on Your Plate. It actually was banned in Germany because it was offense against people's dignity. Basically, they're comparing the lives of the Jews in the concentration camps to the lives lived by the pigs in those farms for meat consumption. Is it over the top? Is it beyond what we will accept? How about looking at these advertisements which were actually banned by the Super Bowl as being too racy, talking about was sex in the kitty, so what animals would do naturally and why you need to spay and neuter. So take a peek at this commercial.
Be good, kitty.
right, then look at this second spot by PETA. Also banned because it was too sexually suggestive. Clearly they didn't learn anything from the first one. So if you want to know more, you can actually go down to the link and see some other ads that have been rejected by the NFL for Super Bowl. And when you consider a Super Bowl ad spend is at least $1 million, not even including production, it's really a big chance to make that commercial and not have it air. Or do they know it won't air and they want to build off that controversy because it's not airing? It's prevalent because it works. We're constantly paying attention. It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. So let's look at Benetton and how they use shockvertising as part of the main core of their marketing and advertising spend. They start with things like multicultural harmony in 1989. All humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So we've got people of a lot of different colors, a little bit out of the norm for 1989. We jump ahead to things like the piano, where we've got a very black and white, juxtaposed with our hands of the black and white individuals. So how about this one? Is this a message that is balanced or not? It's really kind of up in the air. Some people say it's really imbalanced because we've got the towhead blonde, blue-haired girl who looks very angelic. And then we've got the African-American kiddo. And what's her hair doing? It almost looks like she's got devil horns. So did they intentionally create that juxtaposition, or did that just kind of come as the way people saw something? Because sometimes people will see the messages completely differently than how you planned them. How about the fact that Arab countries refused to print this advertisement at all because of the appearance of the different races together? So how about we jump up a little bit more to that whole black and white, and now we introduce an element of nudity. Did they go over the top with this? In 1989, yes. This was over the top for them. So they decided to go with something a little different. Nothing's more consistent than love. For love, we choose hearts. So we've got white, black, and yellow. Now, we're not necessarily looking at skin tone or race, but we definitely gross quite a few people out with the sheer anatomy of having those organs there. So let's jump up to 1992, where we definitely are pushing the envelope a little bit more. We've got images like the kissing nun, where we're challenging religious beliefs. Why are we doing that as a clothing company? Why would we want to be associated with that? Because we want that buzz. We want to be the ones who are pushing the envelope. They want to be the ones who are constantly out there making you think other things. So are those emotional images, without written copy, are they enough? Are they morally acceptable? Is it the job of those advertisers to help you question? Benetton then goes on to start using published news photographs as the backgrounds of their advertisement in order to raise awareness about child labor. Or here, about people who are trying to escape from whatever conditions their country are in. These ads alone, sales jumped 10% in the 91-92 during this controversy, during the time that they're using these news advertisements. So why did it work? Were they making things so much more obvious? Did they have some type of ploy saying we're going to donate some of our funds? Or that we're behind this company that is willing to go out there on a limb? So then we jump to this Time feature, which was the deathbed of man dying from AIDS, which during this time was really a big issue. AIDS was very hard to deal with. It was one of those things that only happened to gay men. It was one of those things that only happened to people who had loose morals. We are far more adapted to dealing with those diseases today than we were then. So what is it that Benetton uses his deathbed as an advertisement, as a way to raise awareness about homosexuality and about AIDS and about sexually transmitted diseases? So then we jump to the next idea, which is a We on Death Row campaign as a way to bring awareness to people actually on death row. Benetton is an Italian company, but definitely had a big audience here in America. It was, part of their pro-life message that we suffer at all costs. We don't do wrong just by taking their life away. It's not going to make their crime go away. These were actually taken in a Missouri jail, and it was accused of glamorizing those murders and those crimes. Caused Sears to cancel their contract with Benetton, which was a loss of millions of dollars. State of Missouri filed a lawsuit because it was featuring our inmates. So would that frighten you if you were at a bus shelter or driving by? Is it Benetton's place to discuss this in their advertising? So then they jump to 2011 and definitely play with some Photoshop. We've got the Unhate campaign, where they're very strong messages, very strong images. They said they don't want to be disrespectful, but they wanted them to create that statement, that brotherhood of a kiss. So would it work? Did it work? Would you do it? So there's a very fine line between propaganda and persuasion. Most information, whether it's factual, is relayed through or not through the mass media. It relies on those emotional appeals in those visual presentations. So think back on the few images, well, more than a few, images that we've looked at so far. They tug at your heartstrings. They make you cringe. They make you wonder. They make you laugh. Those are all intentional responses. So persuasion uses factual information and emotional appeals to change your opinions, to promote a desire for favor. Whereas propaganda uses one-sided, often non-factual information or opinions that appear to be facts, but are still appealing to those emotions. So we're appealing to three different things when we're talking about propaganda. We're talking about ethos, which is your source credible? We're talking about logos, which is, do you present a logical argument? And pathos, do you create an emotional appeal? So Aristotle's the first one who starts writing about the art of persuasion, saying if you can make something seem real, you can make people believe it. So let's look at this commercial, which is from 2004, which was also turned down by CBS for the Super Bowl. So in response, CNN plays the spot on the news. So the spot still gets out. It still gets a lot more coverage. This spot is talking about what's going to happen with tax cuts, who's going to have to pay for these changes. What happens? What are the impacts that we have of the decisions we make today? So I'll go ahead and take a peek. So propaganda isn't new. It didn't start with Hitler. It didn't start with the wars. It started with the Catholic Church in ways of trying to increase membership by actually propagating the faith, which is part of how we get that term propaganda. So sometimes it's duping that unsuspecting public through misleading or false information. Sometimes they're considered thought control techniques. 3/4 of all media content contains some type of propaganda. It's for a cause, it's for an idea, for an institution, for some type of political party, for some type of person. We're constantly trying to convince someone that we're right about something. So we look at political propaganda and what kind of images do they choose? Do they choose wholesome young women? Do they assume we're going to always trust everything we read without question? Well, is that why we have Snopes.com? Isn't that the reason that we have all these resources to fact check? So let's look at World War I, where they knew that they needed to get the buy-in of the country. So they're getting Together we will win. Showing the different types of people. You don't have to have been a military person. You can come from the field. You can come from the labor unions and still find your place. You can still support your country. We jump forward to things like the use of Uncle Sam as a way of trying to get people involved. And we see this Uncle Sam image a lot. We see it still being used today. Look at how many parodies of Uncle Sam that we have. This is an image that was created for World War I. So let's jump up to World War II, where it was vital to bolster morale and home front efforts and getting everyone involved. Everyone needed to recycle. Everyone needed to go to work. So we've got really strong images of women like Rosie the Riveter. And we still see this being used again in 2010 as part of a political campaign. Let's look at the Nazis' use of propaganda. This is a really fascinating piece of work. It was definitely pro-Axis, made by a Norwegian artist. It depicts those Americans as smashing monsters. They're destroying European culture. You see it by having the bombs stepping on the town below. You see it in the Americans being represented by the Ku Klux Klan and Indians and only liking pop culture, and we're really into money. And oh, by the way, we had to deal with that whole issue called slavery. Look at all the different images and symbols that we have going on. USA will ready Europeans. So look at all these different things that we have going on. We've got the different African Americans in the cage. Look at all the different symbols that are being used. How they're tying us in with Lady Liberty. Imagine walking by this every day. If you're a 5 or 6-year-old in Germany, what would you think about Americans? Nothing good, right? So part of the propaganda in World War II was part of trying to portray the Japanese who attacked Pearl Harbor and any other Axis power as they were grotesque, they were foreign, they were uncivilized. Stay on the job until every murdering Jap is wiped out. This is put out by the government as one of their posters, as a way to get people to do it, and it did work. So let's jump up to propaganda in the 1960s, where we're anti-war, and we come up with the Flower Child movement, and the whole idea is war is not healthy for children and other living things. This simple sunflower logo becomes part of the visual that is the peace movement, that is the hippies, that is that whole era of civil rights. So let's look at persuasion in advertising. Right now, you've got about 400,000 people who are involved in the advertising business, for about $650 billion in annual billings worldwide. So this is actually the scene of where the bombs were dropped in Nagasaki. You wouldn't know today, would you? There's not a memorial. There's nothing special. So does advertising benefit society? What do you think? It helps fund the media, it provides consumer info, it stimulates the economy, but it's so hard to break through. There's so much clutter, everything becomes advertising. So how do we deal with things like product integration? When is it product placement? When does it help the movie? When is it just a commercial? Take a peek at this one for FedEx.
Hi.
Hi.
I was marooned on an island for 5 years with this package, and I swore that I would deliver it to you because I work for FedEx.
That's very admirable. Thank you.
Hey, but by the way, what's in the package?
Nothing really. Just a satellite phone, GPS locator, fishing rod, water purifier, and some seeds. Just silly stuff. Thank you again. You keep up the good work.
How about other product placement? We see it in TV shows like The Big Bang Theory. We see it in Fast and the Furious. So, NASCAR doesn't have any hidden messages there, do they? So, top 10 advertising placement value. Dell, Samsung, Apple. Survivor's really good at doing product placement, and they get to have a Sprite when they're on the island. So they actually made a parody movie documentary called Palm, the greatest movie ever sold. It's the whole idea that movies and entertainment are made possible by brands, that we have to have it in order to fund the movies we want to have made, in order to create the type of entertainment that we accept. So how do we go to in creative placement? How about the fact that CBS actually stamped eggs that you got at the grocery store with a CBS Mondays, leave the yolks to us, crack the case on CBS, funny side up, shelling out laughs. Would that creep you out if your eggs at the grocery store had a bunch of words on them? I'm not sure about that. How about this one for FedEx Kinko's, where they say shipping is available now. So we actually have them trying to ship a tree, which is kind of fun. Or how about the fact that we had KFC go through and fix potholes in a city because no one else was doing it. And they left their mark saying, provided by KFC. So is that an amazing publicity stunt? Is it great placement? I don't know, kind of depends. How about this type of placement for paint? I think it's clever. I think it's kind of amazing. It makes you stop and look. It makes you want to find out. But do you know it's for paint? How about this one? If you walked by this, would it catch your attention? Would you remember the brand? Would you go buy it? Are you communicating effectively? The big nail polish in the middle of the street. All right, how about this one for Sudafed? Knowing, how billboards are made, knowing what they're going to do with it, tucking up the fabric so you get that kind of look that you're all stuffed up and under the covers. How about this one? For a building that was under construction. They wanted to increase the consumption of milk. So what do? They actually cover up part of the building and put a giant billboard on it. So the billboard goes from here. But this is an image. So it shows that he's pushing part of the building because he's so strong from drinking milk. Isn't that kind of fun? Doesn't it make you stop and look and pay attention? How about using things like augmented reality? How do you use QR codes? When do you use QR codes? Are they a pain? Are they worth it? Have you done it? How about on a t-shirt? Would you honestly want to scan someone's t-shirt? I wouldn't. I've seen them on billboards and I don't understand that at all. I don't know if you're supposed to stop and take a picture of it. To me, that seems dangerous. All right, how about public relations as persuasion? Public relations does have an attempt to influence the public about a product, a company, an issue. We're saying about 50% of all media stories are generated by PR. So is it propaganda? Is it persuasion? Is it strictly factual? Is it opinion? Is it in your best benefit? How about things like photo opportunities as part of public relations? They're an arranged opportunity to take that photograph of a politician, a celebrity, a notable event. Photo op has definitely required that negative connotation. It's usually a pseudo event, something that's made up so we can take the picture. We see this a lot with what's called grip and grins, where they have the check passing or the big ribbon cuttings. They're things that were set up so we can be there just to take a picture. So, impeach the red mayor. We've got little kids. We're painting a really good story here, right? So a photo op is someone doing something solely for the purpose of being seen doing it. We see this a lot of cases today where we have people going into hospitals, where we have the students going in and doing things just so they can get their pictures taken. How about this one from George Bush? Here we've got this big sign that says mission accomplished. He's giving this whole speech about how they've conquered terrorism and have done really great things. It took another 12 years before anything actually happened. So is this a photo op that comes back to bite you? How about this one of George Bush? Hurricane Katrina hits. Bush is away. He's at his ranch. And he didn't pay attention to what was the biggest news story in his country right now. So on the way back, he has Air Force One fly over as a photo op. But a lot of people didn't think that he looks upset. They think he looks confused. They think he looks bored. What type of reaction would you want to see from your president when he sees all that devastation? When this becomes the image that they're putting out? What does this image say to people in 50 years, in 100 years? When they're looking at our historic record, they're looking at these images. It's considered one of the hovering points of damage. And it really hurt his actual political career. Or how about the fact that in order to kind of create this buzz, this interesting photo, they took a picture of Air Force One going over Statue of Liberty, but it actually caused a huge panic because the flight paths had been changed so much. To see an airplane there was very unusual. And so while we've got this great photo op, it caused a huge panic. People thought 9/11 was about to happen again. How about using that yellow journalism? When is it okay? We've got 1928. Ruth Snyder's the first woman executed since 1899. So we're using that image. We're selling the news in a different way, a more visual way than our competition. Remember, this time you've got rows and rows of columns of words, usually in your newspapers. You don't have a giant picture. How about images like this? People, when they talk about the Hindenburg, still can describe this image 50 years after it happened, because that image is part of their collective memory. It's part of the more you know, the more you see. So take a look at the top 100 photos that changed the world. Are they propaganda? Are they persuasion? What do you think?